Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. It has become clear, painfully clear, the president has declared bankruptcy on the question of handling the coronavirus. He can't fix it, so he is giving up. All you have to do is look at his Twitter feed. He doesn't really want to talk about it anymore. He's basically done with it. He's moving on. He wants America to open up and move on as well, and there are likely going to be thousands more preventable deaths because of it. The only thing Trump is worried about right now is whether he gets reelected. And what's becoming increasingly evident is that his response to the virus has been a disaster. We are seeing that the public understands that. You see it in Trump's poll numbers. His poll numbers about his handling of the virus are sinking. And he has been, according to multiple reports, increasingly worried, even freaking out about losing reelection. And so amidst this panic and flailing, the president is moving in an increasingly lawless direction to subvert the rule of law and the basic underpinnings of the integrity of the government. Now, keep in mind, he was already impeached for abusing the power of his office. And at the time, this was House impeachment manager Adam Schiff's warning in his closing statements.
Now, you may be asking, how much damage can he really do in the next several months until the election? A lot. A lot of damage. And you know, you can't trust this president do what's right for this country. You can trust he will do what's right for Donald Trump. He'll do it now. He's done it before. He'll do it for the next several months. He'll do it in the election if he's allowed to.
A lot of damage. He can do a lot of damage. Less than 5 months after Congressman Schiff said those words, it's getting worse right now in front of all of us. Just in the last 2 days, just take a second to tick through where we are right now. In the last 2 days, Trump's 2016 campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, you might remember, who was indicted and convicted and refused to cooperate with investigators against Trump, right? He got essentially a life sentence under his conviction. He was released from prison as a coronavirus mercy case, even though he has not met the requirement for that case, released by the Bureau of Prisons, which is part of the Department of Justice, which is run by William Barr. At the same time, Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, who committed a felony, he says, on the president's behalf and who testified against the president, Michael Cohen was supposed to be released from prison because of the coronavirus in early May. Again, run by the Bureau of Prisons under the Department of Justice under William Barr. That release was mysteriously delayed without explanation. At the same time, the Department of Justice is trying to drop the charges against the president's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, even though he literally pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. The president has urged the prosecution and jailing of both President Barack Obama and his current opponent, Joe Biden. Trump's current acting director of national intelligence, who's basically a professional Twitter troll, is leaking innocuous documents meant to foment a scandal around the last administration. Trump's allies in Congress are saying they're going to start hearings into the origins of the Russia investigation, while the president hectors Lindsey Graham to call Barack Obama. Trump's undermining the rule of law in just the last few weeks is the kind of thing you see in other countries, Russia or Turkey and China, something that we're seeing here. And here's the key part of it. Trump never really has to order for any of this to be done. I mean, I don't know. We don't know one way or the other whether he told William Barr to spring Paul Manafort or not. But he doesn't have to. People around him just do it for him. Another example, just today, the post office announced that it is opening a review. Interesting. A review of its contract with a bunch of private companies it contracts with, including Amazon, among others, which the president has been publicly lobbying for explicitly because the president of the United States does not like the First Amendment protected coverage that is done by the Washington Post, which is owned by Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos. And Trump wants to screw Jeff Bezos and screw the Washington Post. And he wants to use the post office to do it. And Trump installed his lackey to run things over there. And guess what? Look, they now made an announcement. They're going to review the contracts. All of that is the necessary context for the story of Republican Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina. Richard Burr seemed real shady after he dumped up to $1.7 million in stocks in the weeks before the outbreak, right before the market crashed. He did this while privately talking about what a disaster the pandemic was going to be, even though publicly he said, we're prepared and we'll be fine. Now, the more you look at these stock trades, the worse it got. I mean, this was a guy who had not done a lot of stock trading, This was his biggest trade in several years. And then get this, we also learned his brother-in-law also dumped his stock on the same day. All of that is sketchy as hell, ethically indefensible, possibly illegal. And last night, the LA Times reported federal agents seized a cell phone belonging to Burr on Wednesday night as part of the Justice Department's investigation into controversial stock trades he made as the novel coronavirus first struck the U.S. Seizing a U.S. senator's cell phone is a big deal. A lot of people's reaction is that Senator Burr had it coming. And I get that. On the merits, I think there's a strong case for him having it coming. I mean, after all, the FBI had to convince a judge that there was probable cause, right, to give them a warrant to do this. But you also have to wonder about the timing of all this, don't you? About who is being targeted here. I mean, let's remember that Senator Burr ran the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is working on its own report on Russia's election attack. It did it in a fairly bipartisan and fairly thorough manner. Just weeks ago, that committee confirmed that Russia aimed to help Trump back in 2016. They crossed the White House by doing things like subpoenaing the president's son. Today, Senator Burr announced he's stepping down as chair of that committee. And some of the president's biggest propagandists on Twitter gloating about the fact that Burr got it because he crossed the president. The timing around this is all very important. Just last week, the president said the jury's still out on FBI Director Chris Wray. Now, that followed news reports about increasing pressure in Trump world to fire him. Now, Chris Wray is a smart guy. He can read the paper. He sees that. He knows that there's pressure building to fire him. Trump's already fired one FBI head. And Chris Wray is the guy who heads up the FBI. Now, Donald Trump does not have to order that the FBI go after Richard Burr, the Department of Justice do it. But presumably Chris Wray likes his job and doesn't want to lose it. I mean, that's where we are. Part of what is so dangerous about this reality the president has created is you cannot just on good faith trust things done by this administration, trust they're on the level. And I want to stress, this may all be on the up and up. Maybe the Postal Service reviewing Amazon's on the up and up. Maybe Paul Manafort got out of jail for perfectly good reasons that had nothing whatsoever to do with his connection to the president that he refused to roll over on. But we know Trump is vindictive. I mean, he's loudly vindictive. We know Trump himself said the jury is still out on Wray. That's a message sent. We also know somehow a law enforcement official leaked this warrant within 24 hours. That's where we find ourselves now. This is the unsteady state we are in as the pandemic ravages our country and our economy. Over 85,000 dead, 36 million unemployed. The worst crisis for the nation in generations. A president who cannot do the job and has as much chance of fixing the problem as if you shoved me in the nuclear reactor control room in Chernobyl on the night of the accident. And a president who is now determined to do whatever it takes to save himself from his own failures.